Oh my God, I am so excited. I'm over here with somebody that, I look up to. This man is the legend, Mr. Frank Shankwitz in the house, co-founder of Make a Wish Foundation, speaker, consultant, mentor, coach, just a legendary, someone that I really look up to, that inspires me. And every time, when that I feel like giving up, that I feel like tired, if I feel lazy, man, I think about you, Frank, and all the amazing things, that you've done. And you just, somebody that's out there, man, that's constantly pushing, raising the ball. And, I heard that you just retired as a badass detective, after 4 decades. And, and you built something amazing, man. As you were out there, I heard that you were in the Air Force, you were honorably discharged. And then, I heard that you retired as a detective. And at the same time that you did all this, you built one of the greatest and biggest, nonprofits foundations in the world, man. Make a Wish Foundation. I mean, talk about this, Frank. I mean, did you ever think of it, bro? Like that one day you were going to build something this big? And let us know a little bit about this whole story, because so many people out there, they give up so fast, or they say, oh, I don't have time, or I can never accomplish anything because I have my job. You had several jobs, you were on board of advisors, and you were building this magical thing. So let us know and talk a little bit about that, my friend.
Well, first of all, Carlos, thank you for inviting me to be on your show. I really appreciate it. And it just wasn't me for this Make-A-Wish idea. I had an idea and I made it happen. But just going real briefly back to how this all started, in late 70s, I was a motorcycle officer with the Arizona Highway Patrol. And during this period, there was a TV show on NBC called Chips, which starred Larry Wilcox and Eric Estrada. And the show was about 2 California Highway Patrol motorcycle officers and their adventures. Extremely popular show, top ratings, but especially the kids loved it. They loved watching the motorcycles and the adventures of Ponch and John. And I was on a 10-man squad that worked the whole state of Arizona. And as when this show became so popular, we'd ride into a town, 2-man team all the time. And all of a sudden the kids are waving and yell, hey, Ponch, hey, John. Because our motorcycles and our equipment our uniforms almost identical to California Highway Patrol. In fact, we did our initial training with CHP up in Sacramento, except ours obviously said Arizona. So we just started saying if we could go on our off time to the schools, the grade schools, and talk about bicycle safety, which the kids could care less about. They just wanted to get on a motorcycle. But it was a great PR tool, just a good PR tool. And in 1980, our department, the Highway Patrol, was informed about a little 7-year-old boy named Chris. Chris had terminal leukemia and only a couple weeks to live. His family said Chris's wish, and that's the first time we ever heard that word, was someday to be a motorcycle officer like Ponch and John, and he would love to meet a Highway Patrol motorcycle officer. And our department set it up, and I just happened to be the guy that Chris was going to meet because of my reputation of working with the kids all over the state of Arizona. Now, Carlos, I had no idea what to expect. I knew this little boy's in the hospital. He's on IVs. Our state police helicopter is going to pick him up at his hospital. The paramedics and pilots are going to fly him to our headquarters building where I'm going to be standing by to meet this little boy. And I thought they're going to bring him out on a stretcher, a wheelchair. I have no idea. The helicopter lands, the door opens, and out flies this little pair of red sneakers attached to this little boy, running over to the motorcycle. Hi, I'm Chris. And he's just eyes are wide as can be. As far as he's thinking, he's looking at Ponch or John from the show Chips. Because at the time I had red hair and very tan, so I could have been either character. But this little boy is all over the motorcycle, and he watched us so much. He said, these are the red lights. Can I turn it on? These are the flashers. This is the siren. What's in the saddlebags is the same as Ponch has in his. He knew everything about that motorcycle from watching that show. And I'm looking over at his mother, and she's crying. And I can't understand why. Why is she crying? This little boy is having so much fun. Then it dawned on me. He's come off IVs in hospital beds, and he's being now a typical 7-year-old, having so much fun. I asked him if he wanted to go ride on a motorcycle in the parking lot, which we were allowed to do in those days. And he got very, very serious and nervous, Carlos. And he said, well, no, his voice shaking. And I said, well, you just rode in a helicopter. How come you don't want to ride a motorcycle? And he said, helicopters have doors. we learned that doors were very important to Chris. And just then one of our sergeants came up in a patrol car and said, you want to help drive that? Of course he did. He got on the sergeant's lap because it had doors. And he's riding around the parking lot and he's chewing bubble gum and blew this big giant bubble. And I looked over at his mother and I said, there's our bubblegum trooper. Which in fact, she wrote a book titled that, and I think it's still available on Amazon, The Little Bubblegum Trooper.
Wow.
But Chris went on that day to become the first and only honorary highway patrol motorcycle officer in the history of the highway patrol. Now this is going on now 39 years ago. Complete with a custom-made uniform we had made for him, his own badge that was assigned to him, the smoky hat, and the most important thing to him was the motorcycle wings, because he was now a motorcycle officer. I got word Chris got to go home that night. His doctor was up and said, I don't understand. His vitals are so good. Let's let him go home to his comfort zone instead of back in the hospital. I get a call 2 days later. Chris is in the hospital in a coma. He's probably not going to survive the day. I got permission to go to the hospital. I walk in. His uniform is hanging right by his bed. I'm rubbing the motorcycle wings on his uniform. And just as I'm doing that, he comes out of a coma. He looks at me and he says, I am an official motorcycle officer now, aren't I? I said, yes, you are, Chris. He just smiled, started giggling, asked for his uniform. He's rubbing the wing, showing his mother. And a couple hours later, he passed away. I always like to think maybe those wings helped carry him to heaven.
Wow.
What we learned, our commanders learned that Chris is going to be buried in a little town called Kewanee, Illinois. And they asked me and another motorcycle officer to go back and give him a full police funeral. Commander said, we have lost a fellow officer, which we did. We went back to Kewanee and the word got out about what we're doing. And we were met at this little town of Kewanee by Illinois State Police, County Police, City Police, who all wanted to give this little boy a full police funeral. Chris was buried in uniform. His grave marker reads, Chris Gracious, Arizona Trooper.
Wow.
But flying back to Arizona, Carlos, I just started thinking, here's a little boy who had a wish and we made it happen. Why can't we do that for other children? And that's when the idea of the Make-A-Wish Foundation was born.
Wow, man, that's amazing. Frank, as you were talking about this, man, I was just, I was thinking about my father, man. My father, before he passed, I was only 3 months old. He died in a horrible car explosion in Brazil, growing up in the early 80s. I was only 3 months old. And after work, you know what I mean? I just love, hearing amazing stories like this. It's because, he would find the time, even though like you're seeing yourself, right? Just done so much, Air Force, detective work, you start this nonprofit. And it reminds me of him because he was, going through 2 jobs, managing a bank, going to, not 2 jobs, 2 schools, 2 college degrees, managing a bank, having me as a baby. And he still find time after work and he would go around the dumpsters in town. And because people couldn't afford their babies, their kids, and they would drop them near the dumpsters because they couldn't afford them. So my father would go at nighttime, pick up those babies, bro, out of the dumpsters, and he would take them to churches, to shelters. And he would go and recruit more people, to do the same, to go help, go not only pick up those kids, bring them to shelters and to churches, and they would teach them how to, play the guitar, the acoustic, martial arts. And I just love nonprofit stuff. And it just fires me up. And it's such an honor to have you here on the show, my friend. And, speaking of this, like, for somebody out there that wanted to build, like a nonprofit or they wanted to do more, let's talk about, this before the whole, like doing this process, right? That you wanted to make, you saw this wish being a reality that we guys made it for Chris, which is amazing. And well, let's talk about the challenges. You know what I mean? What is the biggest challenges that you had in building this before you became famous, before the company took off, before the big, sponsors came in? Well, let's talk a little bit about the challenges and what did it made you keep it going, my friend?
Well, the biggest challenge was finding people that agreed with that idea. My thing was the Make-A-Wish Foundation. What we're going to do is grant wishes to, and this was then terminal children. because none of these children were surviving. The mission was changed several years ago to children with life-threatening illnesses, because fortunately, through the grace of God and modern medicine, more and more children are surviving after the wish. But like I said, trying to find other people, the officers that were involved, everybody said, no, this won't work. Business leaders that I had known through my connections, nobody's ever heard of this. This idea is not going to work. And I learned a long time ago from a gentleman that was my father figure back in a little town called Seligman, Juan Delgadillo. He said, never give up. Always turn those negatives to a positive. And then another word I learned was stickability. I learned that from Greg Reed. Don't give up. Stick to what you're doing. And
I love that.
4 months in Arizona for the Corporation Commission, we had to have a total of 5 board members to start a nonprofit. And once we finally got those on board, then the next thing, there's no internet during these days. The next thing is going to the library. How do you start a nonprofit? What are the requirements, the Internal Revenue Service, et cetera, et cetera. And that took a lot of research. And like you said, I'm working full time. I'm trying to put this together full time. But it took me 6 months, and we did become official in November of 1980.
Wow.
Now, again, where do we get the money? I started working every off-duty job I could get to put the money into the foundation to get it going. And the same with the other people who were helping me, because we never took a salary. I never took a salary for Make-A-Wish. I wanted everything to go into the foundation.
Yeah, that's what I love about you.
But the smartest thing we did, once we got going on this, the public had never heard of anything like this. And the donations literally started coming in, what I call the mom and pop dollars, the $5, the $10, the $25. That was a lot of money back in 1980.
Oh, yes.
But the biggest thing was, again, nobody had ever heard of anything like this. And NBC Dateline did a feature story on us about 1981 or 2, which just made the foundation explode. All of a sudden, we're getting letters from all over the United States. How do I start a chapter in my state, Now, the biggest thing, Carlos, that our board made a decision on was, we're not experts in the nonprofit field. We're grassroots novice. And you learn in college, always surround yourself with people smarter than you and somebody that knows more than you do. And that was a decision we made, was the first time hire somebody in the nonprofit world to make this foundation grow, which obviously through the years they have. Now you asked me, did I ever foresee this is going to be worldwide? After our first official wish in 1980, 7-year-old boy named Bopsy Salazar, that was his nickname. His first name was Frankie, and he got a kick out of that because I've been known as Pancho my whole life. So he got a kick his first same name. And we sent him to Disneyland. And again, the press just exploded on this. And when he came back, and unfortunately he passed away a few weeks later, but I told our board someday we're going to be national, international, granting wishes all over the world. And they all laughed at me and said, well, just what you said earlier. Look what's happened. We're in 63 chapters in the United States, 36 international chapters on 5 continents, and you just pointed out almost 500,000 wishes have been granted just because of that one little boy that wanted to be a motorcycle officer.
Yes, man, that's just, it's amazing. And it's like, you touched on a few points there, like, like a true master, he's always thinking as a beginner, right? Constantly learning and seeking to surround themselves with others, that are smarter than them, doing bigger things. And one thing that I'm always talk about is how to create better, faster, and newer conversations. And then I'm always speaking around the world about this topic, which you basically did. You're like, okay, how can I, get this thing going? You were working 40 hours, And then, being a police officer, I have many friends, They are police officers and detectives, my family in Brazil, the military people, and I wasn't able to tell you myself when I was younger. So, how stressful it is, throughout the day. You have to deal with all that. So a lot of negativity. And you also touched on another point, which is go from negative into positive. One of my quotes that I always used to say, when I was 7 years old, I went through a lot of physical and mental abuse. And, I don't want to live anymore. But God spoken with me. Whenever I'm on stage, I talk about this being the whispers from God. And then when he spoke with me, he said, you know what, kid? Somebody out there on the street still have worse than you. You might be physically and mentally abused right now, but you don't have the money. You might only have rice to eat. And I know that you've been beaten by your grandfather and your stepfather, and you don't have control out of what you're trying to help. I wanted to help my mom leave the hood, give her a better future. But God said, you know what? Your future doesn't equal your past. unless if you carry on those stories with you. Transform your negatives into positive and watch the magic happens. You know,
Well,
as you are.
and also you mentioned God. I'm glad you said that, because one thing I left out, in 1978, I was involved with a high-speed chase with a drunk driver on my motorcycle, and another drunk driver pulled right in front of me. I couldn't brake and escape. I hit him broadside at 80 miles an hour and was pronounced dead at the scene. My partner tried to revive me. He couldn't. They called in the code. The officer killed in the line of duty. An off-duty emergency room nurse from California stopped and insisted she try and work on me. And after 4 minutes, she obviously brought me back to life. But it took almost 6 months to recover from the accident. Skull fracture, traumatic brain injury. And I had to do a lot of counseling during that period. And when you mentioned God, towards the end of that, the counselor said to me, God spared you for a reason, and you have to find out what that reason is. And then 2 years later, I was introduced to this little boy.
Wow.
So I just believe God intervened in all of this.
Yes, man. You know, it's something that I every time, and even when I'm speaking, it's like you gotta put God first and just having the faith, guys. Just like somebody like Frank, that it started from nothing. Like you guys know me, I always love to have self-made people here in the show, because those are inspirational stories to show, you know, you, the listener out there, that anything is possible. Oh, you know, you probably hear all the time, oh, most foundations, they are not successful. Why? Is because people, they quit. It's so easy to quit. But, you know, when you put God first, when you trust God and you're having faith, there's something that you believe. You guys heard me say the same days on the other show, you know, you got to know, when you know your why, and you go deep enough, and you know what I mean, and you know that's possible, and like just the experience, and then going, let's talk about rejections, because, you know, one thing, every time that I feel rejected, you know, growing up, you know, even from selling bread on the streets of Brazil, for you guys that know my story, you know, sold bread 11 years, age 7 to 18 to come to America. I have to have a lots of no's, but whenever I hear the word no, I would say next. So let's talk about some rejections, Frank, you know what I mean? Because, you know, even though I always tell people, man, even when you reach the top, you know, that's when the stuff really begin, you know what I mean? Like, and as you know what I'm talking about, we still, you know, face rejection. There's a lot of politics involved in nonprofits. And let's talk about a moment, you know what I mean, that you wanted to get something, you know, and you were going, like, you saw the company, you know, moving, and you're like, man, you just tired, you're stressed out, and you're being rejected left and up. Let's talk about something crazy that you did, like doing, as I always talk about, right? Doing what others don't do, can do, and won't think about. And I heard something about Disney, you know? So let's talk a little bit about this Disney story.
I'm going to tell you, the first rejection didn't happen. I mentioned a little boy named Bopsy that wanted to go to Disneyland. And this is our first official wish. This is in 1981. And our secretary kept calling Disney and saying, we're the Make-A-Wish Foundation, what we would like, we've got a 7-year-old boy, terminal leukemia, we'd like to get free admission into the park, and also if he could get in the front of the lines. He's very ill, he's in a wheelchair. Now, Disney had never heard of us. They had no idea, and they get requests like this all the time. I understand that. And she said, just please let me talk to the director of public relations. And I'm sorry, he's busy. And she came to me and she said, just what you said, they're rejecting us. They won't let us talk to them. And I said, okay, let me call over there. So I did call Disney, and they said, who is this? And I said, this is Officer Frank Shankwitz, Arizona Highway Patrol. And right away, I kind of got the secretary's attention. She said, what is this about? And I said, I have a warrant for one of your people. Well, guess who I got to talk to, Carlos? But the minute I got the gentleman on the phone, I said, I just lied to you. Here's my name, here's my badge number, here's my supervisor's name and telephone number. All you have to do is call him and I will be terminated immediately. But will you please listen to my story? He did listen. And now, 38 some years later, Disney being one of the biggest sponsors, literally millions and millions and millions of dollars. And sometimes you have to lie a little bit, but I always say, qualify that lie as soon as you can.
Hey, you got creative, man, and I appreciate it, because, you know, one thing that I appreciate about you, Frank, because, you know, integrity, right? Integrity is everything. You know, like you did as I call a white lie, you know, it's like a baby lie, you know, as my daughter says. But you know what I mean? But you were honest about it. You put it in the game. Like you face your fear, because what if that person would call, then your job would be terminated.
Yes, definitely. I'd be inspired. Yeah.
You know, and I admire that of you because you did something like the unthinkable, right? It's I always tell people, if that's a will, that is a way. People all the time, oh, they give up. You know, things are flying over here everywhere. It's all good. We're not editing. We keep it going. But you know what I mean? It's like things will happen. Just like right now, things are flying over here in my studio. It is all good. You keep it going. In life, things is going to happen against your expectations. You're going to be rejected, and you're going to have to face, you're going to get into situations where, like, you know, because imagine even to try to raise a whole lot more money to bring those kids into Disney if they wouldn't fund that. But you literally went against, above and beyond the comfort zone, which is one thing that I always tell people. It's like number one thing that you want to do to succeed is set daily goals to go above and beyond the comfort zone. And number two, master self-talk. And then keep going, right? Doing what others don't do, can do, and won't think of doing. I just love their story. And then Frank, you know, I know that you have so many inspirational stories, you know, and you know, I know that you and Robin Williams have something in common, which is you guys are big in making the wishes of kids coming through. And this is something that, you know, Robin used to do. As I always talk about this on stage, is like, what are you doing at the end of the day that nobody's talking about? What are you doing that you are not promoting? What are you doing that you are not putting out there? When the end of the day is just between you and God, you know what I mean? You're in four walls. And this is something that Robin, you know, used to do, and then he didn't expose to the media, you know what I mean? Till after his passed, it became exposed. And talk about their story, man. The wish that he made, you know, for the little girl, you know what I mean? It's just
Robin Williams was very involved with Make-A-Wish, but he never wanted the publicity. He never wanted his name associated with something that he helped do. And a lot of families also don't want anything because it's very private between them. But my favorite story of Robin Williams, and he lived in the San Francisco area, and for the San Francisco area, there was a little girl who had a wish that she wanted to meet the Beast from Beauty and the Beast. And this is one that was on the stage play from New York, was now traveling the country. And in fact, we're coming to San Francisco. And the chapter was going to arrange for this little girl to meet the Beast. However, she got extremely, extremely ill. And while the show was on, she just couldn't do it. The day the show left, she could actually finally get up out of the hospital and go. But obviously the show was gone. Robin Williams heard about this, and he said to the chapter, just let me handle this. About a week later, he says, I'm going to have this little girl picked up in a limousine. I'm going to pick her up. I'm going to take her to the theater where Beauty and the Beast had played. And the little girl's excited. At least she gets to see the stage. It's just him and her. They go inside on the stage. They've got that little solo stage light there. And he says, this is where the Beast, so on. And he said, you know what? I can hum the theme song for Beauty and the Beast. Can I have the dance with you? As the Beast would do. So he's dancing with a little girl. That's part of her wish, to meet and dance with the Beast. And then all of a sudden, there's music in the background, orchestration type music. And he keeps dancing with her. Then somebody taps him on the shoulder, and it's the Beast now dancing with this little girl. Now the house lights start coming on, and it shows the full orchestra is in the orchestra pit. The full stage lights come on, the full cast and settings from the Beauty and the Beast are now in place. The whole house lights come on, and the place is packed just with people clapping and cheering on. Robin Williams had arranged for all this himself and paid for everything, but you will never read about it anywhere because that's a personal thing that he wanted to give to the child. What a man, what a gentleman.
Wow.
What a loss to us.
Yes, man. I love, you know, Robin, man, just an amazing, and, you know, this is two amazing things, you know what I mean, that you guys have in common to helping the kids out there. And I tell everyone out there, man, it's just like, just whatever is that thing that you dream. I know it might suck right now. You know, you probably, you know, if you are out of money and piling debt and you don't think that is hope, just know that is hope. Know that somebody out there has worse than you. You know what I mean? And whenever I make some trips to Africa and the little kids, they come to me with their list, you know, and then their top wish is like a toothbrush, you know, and then most people, they take it for granted, a toothbrush. So that, and they tell me.
You just said that, and some people think the wishes are so extravagant. We've had wishes where a little boy wants a basketball. You mentioned shoes. Another little girl wants some shoes, a television set, a computer. Not everything is extravagant like that. In fact, the majority are just something very simple.
Yes. No, man, I love that. And Frank, let's say if, I drop you at a country, that they speak English, so you don't have to learn another language. And you have to start it from scratch. You know what I mean? And what would just tell the listener, somebody out there that maybe their wish is to start a foundation and they wanted to build, something amazing and to give it back. What is the biggest, either one or three advices that you would give to someone to start it from scratch, to try to get, to create momentum and to get to the end result? This is a question that I used to ask as a little kid, and I used to sell bread on the streets of Brazil. I would go to the local business owners and I would ask them, tell me 1 to 3 things that if I wanted to do what you do, where should I start so that I can, try to get to the end result quicker, even though I'm not talking about quicker overnight. I'm talking about, instead of taking, decades, maybe, 5, 6, 7 years versus 30, 40, 50, you know what I mean? What's the biggest advice that you would do if you would have to start it over again? Maybe 1 to 3 things that you would focus on.
Well, the biggest thing is whatever your mission has to be, it has to be something that's acceptable, that the public will there's so many alike type foundations out there. So it's got to be something unique, something the public is going to look at and say, wow, look at this. Look what this guy or gal is trying to do, or this group. Something would really fit. Once you get the public interest, the biggest thing is to get the press on your side. And again, Make-A-Wish, the press had never heard of anything like this. So immediately we got newspaper coverage, television coverage, just radio coverage, interviews. The press is your biggest asset to get to. And it'd be so simple. I have a gentleman down in the Phoenix, Arizona area that wanted to help the homeless, especially in the summertime, with the water, with food, with everything else, temporary shelters. And I suggested we get on the press. The press loved it, especially in the homeless, again, in the summertime in the heat, and picked it up. This gentleman is doing so great on his foundation, and he's not taking a salary yet.
Yes, man.
There's that integrity thing. Once I really get this build up, he said, then I'll start taking the salary. And there's nothing wrong with taking a salary in nonprofit. You've got to have overhead expenses. You've got to hire the people, the CFOs, the CEOs, and so on, to really make your foundation grow once it gets going boom.
Yes, no, I'm a firm believer there. And that's why I normally don't talk much about foundations, but yours is just like I'm in love with this. I'm always looking to add value, especially I know that you and I, we have friends, but beyond that, it's just, I just love, your mission, what you are behind. And it's such an honor to have you here, Frank. I know that we are almost time. I know that you and I have so many crazy stories. We can go on all day. But here, my last question to close out this amazing show and interview, my friend, and is last day on earth, what would you write down?
I'm sorry, say that again?
It's the last day on earth. What would you write it down? 1 or 2 sentences.
The last day of America?
Last day on earth.
Oh.
What would you write it down?
Thank you. Thank you, God. What a life you've given me.
Yes.
Simple as that.
Yes. No, man, I really appreciate it, my friend. That's like everything, every day. As I start my day, it's all my thank you. Thank you for this amazing day. One more day. Thank you for having an opportunity, right? For one more day here. I'm thankful to you for being here. I'm thankful that we woke up today to do this interview. You know what I mean? That's amazing. That's what it takes, right? Thank you. But my friend, thank you so much. And Frank, where can they, I know that you have an amazing movie coming up. That's what we wish we'd have more time to talk about this, but that was one wish that you always been making, all these wishes being granted. And one of your wishes was to, having a movie, because, through the power of entertainment, we can get this message to over 1 billion people. And where they can hear more about this movie, The Wishman, maybe we have you on the show, a few months from now. So whenever the movie is, before the movie's out, so that we can get it to even more people, where they can, see more about this, they can see more about you, where they can get a hold of you.
Well, you can go to my website, wishman1.com, wishman1.com, and there's we're keeping up to date on the movie. The movie just completed post-production 2 weeks ago now, and we have meetings with distributors in another 2 weeks to see if somebody in fact is going to buy this movie and get it into the theaters. You can also go to my Facebook page, just Frank Shankwitz, friend me, or Frank Shankwitz public figure, and we've got all the information about the movie on there also. And then my book has just been re-released, Wishman, and it'll be on Amazon available about another week.
Awesome.
A new publisher, and we've kind of added some new stories and having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to reading that one, my friend. And then if they wanted to add value, contribute to your foundation, Frank, where can they go?
For the Make-A-Wish Foundation, go to wish.org, wish.org, and it will give up in one of the corners a chapter locator. You can put your zip code in there and we'll take you to anywhere in the United States or world for that matter, where your local chapter is.
Oh, that's awesome, my friend. No, Frank, thank you so much, Frank. What an amazing, amazing interview, my friend. I'm looking forward, seeing you again on this show. And then for everyone out there who is listening, make this day epic. Have an amazing day, everybody. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. Until the next time.
Hey, Carlos, thank you.
Thank you, sir.